Hi, I'm Sasha Winkler. I'm a third-year PhD student at the University of California, Los Angeles, and I'll be presenting today on my research with Dr. Susan Perry on the development of sex differences in play in wild white-faced capuchins. So to start, animal play is an interesting behavior from an evolutionary perspective, partly because it is so ubiquitous. Most young mammals play, and play is also seen in birds and possibly even reptiles and fish. Play is also costly in terms of time and energy, so there are several hypotheses that aim to address the potential fitness benefits of play. There are two main hypotheses I will address here. First is the physical practice hypothesis. This says that play is a domain where young animals can practice physical skills needed in adulthood. For example, object play could be practice for object manipulation and extractive foraging needed in adulthood, and social play, such as play fighting, pictured here, could be physical practice for tactical skills needed in serious aggression in adulthood. And the bonding hypothesis is a different hypothesis. It says that for young animals, especially for social primates, such as capuchins and humans, play allows individuals to learn about and start to form social bonds with peers. So another interesting thing about play is that it is a domain where sex differences become apparent early in life. So male mammals usually have higher rates of social play than females. This is also true of humans, where multiple studies have found that boys engage in higher rates of rough and tumble play than girls. This sex difference in mammals is often attributed to the physical practice hypothesis because male reproductive success is usually more dependent on aggressive competition. They have a greater need for rough and tumble play to practice those skills. This is also supported by evidence that monogamous and polyandrous species tend to have more similar rates of play between males and females. However, most of the studies on play in the animal literature are cross-sectional, and it's largely lacking longitudinal data on developmental patterns of play across the lifespan. So white-faced capuchins are an excellent species for research on play because they have long juvenile periods. They're very social. They can live in social groups of up to 40 individuals in the wild, and they engage in both social and solitary play, and they often play into adulthood. They also rely on extractive foraging for their diet. Thus, object play could help in practicing those foraging skills that they'll need as adults. As for their social behavior, they have female phallopatry and male dispersal. So females usually stay in their natal groups and males emigrate from their natal groups around the age of 5 to 7. Male reproductive success in white-faced capuchins is highly dependent on coalitionary aggression. In order to have offspring, they generally need to take over and become the alpha of a new social group, and they need male allies to do so. And for this reason, because alphas usually sire most of the offspring, reproductive skew is very high among males, much higher than females. And male reproduction is therefore much more competitive and dependent on fighting skill and their ability to form alliances. On the other hand, female reproductive success is generally thought to be limited more by access to food resources. And social bonds do have important impact on fitness in females through maintaining group stability and in their ability to attain high rank, which then can lead to more access to food. So it is still unknown whether there's sex difference in play in the species, but under both hypotheses I mentioned before, the practice and bonding hypothesis, we expected to see higher rates of play among males than females. Because males depend more on fighting ability, you'd expect to see more social play in males, but because social skills also might have a higher impact in males simply because of the high reproductive skew. Also, an important note is that much of what we know about the behavior of white-faced capuchins is because of research that has been done by Dr. Perry and the Lomas Barbudal Monkey Project. So this provides important context for this research project and is foundational for our knowledge about this species in general. So the research questions I'm seeking to address in this project are whether there are sex differences in how often white-faced capuchins play, whether the sex difference changes over development at all, and are there meaningful differences in the rates of social versus solitary play, whether these differ by sex, and then finally, what, if anything, this can tell us about the evolutionary functions of play. So to answer these questions, I'm using a 18-year data set, data collected from 2002 to 2019 at the Lomas Barbudal field site in Costa Rica. The subjects are 38 wild white-faced capuchins who were observed since infancy, members of 11 social groups, and a standardized focal follow protocol was used to track them throughout their lives of approximately 10-minute long focal follows with instantaneous point samples of their behavior every 2.5 minutes. And this consistent data protocol over the 18 years allows us to use this longitudinal data. So the behaviors we looked at specifically are social play and solitary play. Just to give you a little more idea of what those look like. Social play consists of playful chasing, wrestling, and mock biting. And solitary play consists of any play behaviors without a partner, so solitary locomotor play or object play with no obvious foraging purpose. So for the analysis, I ran 2 Poisson generalized linear mixed models. For one, the outcome variable is the rate of social play, and for the other, the outcome variable, the rate of solitary play. As predictor variables, we included sex, age, and the interaction between sex and age. And we also included a random effect for individual to account for repeated sampling with individuals over time. So here are the results for social play. On the y-axis, you can see the rate of social play measured as the proportion of total point samples taken that year. The size of the dot corresponds with the number of point samples taken for that individual that year, which is accounted for as an exposure in the model. And the x-axis is age in years. The color of the dots represents whether it is male or female, and these lines represent the model predictions with bootstrapped 95% confidence intervals. So as you can see, for both males and females, rates of social play decrease with age. There was a significant effect of sex and the interaction of sex and age, such that males had higher overall rates of social play than females and had a slower decline in the rate of social play with age compared to females. So here are the results for solitary play. As with social play, solitary play rates decrease with age for both sexes. There was no significant effect for sex, but there was a significant interaction of the effect of sex and age, such that rates of solitary play decreased over time more quickly for females than for males. However, as you can see in this graph, the model predictions for males and females are fairly similar, and the effect size overall is very small. So to summarize, we saw sex difference in social play, but not solitary play. So compared to females, males spent more time in social play throughout their lives. And in solitary play, we saw no sex difference, no significant main effect of sex. And as I said, the interaction effect was significant, but the overall effect size was negligible. Interestingly, the peak of male social play was in the years directly preceding emigration. So it actually peaked around ages 3 to 4, and emigration usually occurs around ages 5 to 7. This is interesting because this is the developmental period where fitness depends most on fighting skills and also bonds with co-immigrant males for both mating and survival. So to dig in a little more on the social bond question, we were interested in what is happening here because social bonds are important for fitness in both males and females capuchins. And if the bonding hypothesis is true about social play, that it provides an important domain for forming those bonds, and females are playing less often, perhaps they compensate for the lack of bonding opportunities by increasing rates of other bonding behaviors like grooming. So grooming is known to be an important way for primates to form and maintain social bonds. And in previous studies in white-faced capuchins in adults, females did have higher rates of grooming than males. So we ran a similar model, a Poisson generalized linear mixed model, this time with grooming rate as the outcome. And the predictors were the same, sex, age, and the interaction between sex and age. And we again included a random effect for individual to account for repeated sampling over time. So here are our results for grooming. As you can see, females had a significantly higher overall rate of grooming than males. They also had a significant interaction between sex and age, such that the rates of grooming actually increased over the lifespan for females, but had a slight decrease over the lifespan for males. So although this is correlational, it does highlight how males and females might prioritize different kinds of social behavior starting early in life. And I suggest that perhaps some of the time spent in social play trades off with grooming, so that females allocate more time toward grooming while males allocate more time toward social play, where they're maintaining their social bonds, but also gaining the physical fighting benefits of social play. So to wrap up all three analyses, we found a sex difference in social play, but not solitary play. And male capuchin monkeys allocated more time overall towards social play than females, particularly throughout the juvenile period before emigration. And we suggested that females might compensate for lower opportunities in social play through increases in grooming time. So the results were actually consistent with both the practice and bonding hypotheses. The fact that males have a much higher need for fighting skills and also had higher rates of social play would support the practice hypothesis. However, it's still possible, because these are not mutually exclusive hypotheses, that the bonding hypothesis is true as well, and that males were using social play to form bonds at the same time, and females tend to allocate more of their time toward grooming to form the bonds because they don't need as many of the physical benefits of the that the practice hypothesis confers. So another implication of our research is that play might be a critical domain for the development of sex-specific social strategies, and they might sort of start differentiating between sex-specific social strategies early in life. And finally, I want to emphasize the importance of longitudinal research. Long-term studies such as these are important for understanding developmental patterns of behaviors over the lifespan. And also, I think they will continue to be important going forward in teasing apart some of the evolutionary benefits of behaviors like play, which can have extremely delayed fitness benefits years later, but that are impossible to capture in cross-sectional or short-term studies. And finally, I want to thank our collaborators and funders. Special thanks to Don Cohen, who created the structured database that I used for this project. And thank you to the collaborators who helped me with the analysis, and to the many, many field assistants who have worked at Lomas Barbudal over the years. Over 87 field assistants have dedicated a year or more of data collection to this project and have helped create this amazing data set that I was so privileged to use, which I'm sure will continue to provide insights for years to come. And then finally, thank you to the many funders and the Costa Rican Park Service who have supported the Lomas Barbudal Monkey Project over the years.